Hello. Our next speaker is a software developer at Lightspeed Retail. He's here all the way from Ottawa, where he's the organizer of NSNorth, as well as Cocoa Heads, Philippe Casgrain.
All right. That's a lot more people than I was expecting, so that's probably good. All right. This is a talk that's been on my mind for a long time. For reasons that will become obvious, I wasn't able to give it before, so thanks to AltConf for allowing me to give it. So, not saying clicker is not working. All right. Do it the old-fashioned way. So let's start about you. You've made a trip here. You've made a trip to AltConf. You decided to attend this wonderful conference. And mostly you do this because you like the energy that you get from being around other people, from being facing new ideas, making new connections, making new friends. And what if you could do this home, right? What if you could have this feeling much more often than once a year or twice a year? This is what this is all about. You want to be re-energized on a regular basis. There's only one wrinkle, is that when you're building a community, it's about people. And this is self-evident, obviously. The problem is, when you do online meetings, when you do chat rooms, when you do all of these email, it's very impersonal. And how often have you heard, I will never say this to his face, but I would send it in an email. So being in person has this ability of making us better in a way because we're, more human, more personal. The other problem that's part of this is that we're mostly ugly bags of mostly water, right? So people have lives. They cancel. They're not able to attend the things you're set up. And you have to accept this and move on. That's the baseline. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't work. There's another aspect to it that I would say most of you are aware of, but how many of you have seen this cartoon that made the rounds in January? It's about introversion. If you're an extrovert, you get the cartoon is all about this, but if you're an extrovert, you get your energy by being around other people. If you're an introvert, being around other people, you give energy. So I'm saying this only for the benefits of the extroverts who don't realize that introverts actually expend the energy to be in a group. When they're online, when they're just in their living room, in their basement or something like that, they are very at ease because they completely control everything. But we're in a social situation. They expend a lot of energy, but they chose to expend that energy with your group. Be mindful of that when you're extroverted, and hopefully the introverted people will appreciate all of that. So people will give you a lot. They will take energy or give energy, but overall it's going to be a lot better. So let's start with the worst problem that could happen. You want to start something local, and this is my favorite example because it's how I got started. And a lot of this obviously is my own experience, but I hope that this will apply to you as well. So you start to local user group for something, whether it's about Macs, it's about knitting, it's about anything else. And you do this in a public space, like a cafe or something. I'll have more examples. But the worst thing that would happen is you're there and you're by yourself, nobody shows up. If that's really the worst, then how is that different than what you would normally, which is be on your porch or be at your cafe and do that thing that you would do normally? It's not. That's the key thing. So what you really have to do is you have to be regular. Because if you have a predictable schedule to what you're doing, then people will start coming. And it's been my experience that if you keep at it, it doesn't usually take a very long time. If it's a weekly thing, it might take a month. If it's a monthly thing, it might take 3 months. But people will come. And you'll be surprised at the community that's actually around you that you've never seen. They come out of the woodworks. if you don't want to get started right away, or maybe there's already something going, one really nice thing you can do is you can get involved. And if you can find these people, like if somebody started something, you start attending. If you want to start growing it, you can simply, start a local mailing list. And those are very easy to do. There's like MailChimp and Google Groups and stuff like that. It's trivial. Hosting is about finding a place where we're doing this. And I'll have a little bit more about that. But hosting requires a little bit of organization. Like you need to talk to the people that have the space and make sure that it happens. But if you can take the burden off the person who founded the group and help him or her, that's really very helpful. Speaking is something that's difficult for a lot of people. You have to just go off the high board and do it. There's no other way to do it. And you may think you're going to crash and burn, but in practice, I have never seen somebody crash and burn, even though I thought his or her talk, actually his talk in that case, would have been, I wasn't sure at all about the topic, and it was about some marketing thing, and I ended up applauding what he was saying, because I was not expecting that at all. People will surprise you, is what I'm saying. These are some of the communities that I'm familiar with, and there's obviously a lot more, but my two favorites that came up recently are NS Beer, so people just meet up for beer and talk about programming stuff and more. It doesn't have to be, it's a social event. And NS Sugar Shack. So how many of you know what a Sugar Shack is? No one. One guy, he's from Canada too. So we have maple syrup, and it comes out of maple trees, and we go to the Sugar Shack once or twice a year to cook things in maple syrup, and it's sugary, and it's fat, and it's delicious. So we just meet there and do this. But you can't do it like every week, because then you know. All right. So there's multiple types of groups that you can found. But there's one that's, the grassroots one is the easiest way to do. You basically find your friends, or you do it by local, it's organic growth, right? You start something, you keep at it, and then it just happens because you meet more people, they meet more people. It's the social effect, right? This is the NS whatever stuff that I was talking about. There's also the structured groups. There's a site called meetup.com, and it will help you create a structure for a user group that will meet on a regular basis, and they will handle sending out reminders and having a list of who's attending or not. And there's a little bit more structure to that. My personal model is the hybrid, where I have both a structured section, like the cocoheads.org site, and there's the grassroots part, where I actually use a pass from Passbook that I just, you can download it from the website, and I update it every month with the new information. So people can exchange the pass, and it grows organically by that way as well. So I was talking about spaces. Many spaces are possible. The simplest one is just a cafe. Lots of cafes have space set up for, they can accommodate, 10, 15 people, depending on the layout. You probably want to talk to the owner of the cafe before you start doing something regular, but pretty much all of those that I have spoken to were very happy to have a group of people that are going to come into their cafe, stick for a while, and buy some stuff. Either it's food or drinks or something like that. Public library is one that's often overlooked, because they have space that are designed exactly for that. You would think, library, I can't talk. No, they have like rooms for that. Pubs are more and more frequent, and pubs have more and more have projectors. So they have like something in the bar, you can just set it up, and then they have a screen. So check with your local pub, it might be possible. Companies have office space, and they have presentation rooms and stuff, and if you're doing your meeting in the evening, it might be a really good way to get in. It helps if you know someone at the company. Co-working spaces are very big on that. They typically have meeting rooms to host other groups and to create ad hoc meetings, and they're usually very well equipped in Wi-Fi and AV and stuff. But really what you need is a projector, because you'll want people to show stuff, and don't want everybody to gather around a laptop. It's possible to do with TVs. Wi-Fi is kind of overrated these days. It used to be very important when I started Cocoa Heads about 5 years ago. Now everybody has a phone data plan, so my Wi-Fi, whatever. It's not that important. So what are you going to talk about? well, you could just talk about nothing and just let it organically grow. But it really helps, I think, to start the conversation. I've been doing this for 5 years with Cocoa Heads. We only missed two monthly meetings where we had nothing. Usually people will come up with things to talk about. One of the best sessions that I've had the privilege of attending was a guy that came up and he said, okay, so I have this problem with Xcode. I'd like to debug this. I have no idea how to do this. So he was showing his project and he was setting breakpoints, and then people in the room were like, wait, click here, do this, type this command, whatever. And we were live debugging his app and showing him what was happening, interactive with the audience. Typically, when you're in a group like this, you're sitting in a room with smart people, and that's a common topic when you're building a community. People around you are usually very smart. And actually, they all are very smart. And you can benefit from those, and they will really like to help you. Else they wouldn't be there. That's what they want. So structure, you need kind of need speakers. There's 3 ways of getting speakers. Basically, the way that I use it at Cocoa Heads is anything goes. Anybody wants to talk about anything. It might be programming related, might not. Like Cocoa Heads, we might have to change the name now because it's like Swift Heads or whatever. But it's about, at its base, is about stuff that touches Mac and iOS and somewhat web. But we've had really good talks about how to market stuff and how kids share information between them, like the next generation of teens that are what they are doing, and how nightclubs operate and things like that. That's been very, very interesting. But I like the anything goes ways because that way you step out of you remove the way that you look at things, and you allow other people to express their ideas, and that's the way that you grow, essentially. If you're slightly bigger, you can do a call for papers. Like let's say you have only so many hours, and you have a lot of people that want to speak because it's just a one-time event or something. You can do a call for papers and then get the information, anonymize it. You'll need a volunteer to do that so that there's no name, and then you can just evaluate them based on with either you and a friend, a small committee, and then get something going. That's a bit more involved, and it helps to have something that's been established before. The other way that you can do it is you can just handpick people, ask them to speak, and you'll be surprised. I asked Matt Thompson to speak, and he said yes. I just asked, right? And he said yes. I asked Don Melton to speak, and he said yes. I asked, it's some people will say no, but more often than not, you'll be surprised. The thing about handpicking people is you have to know your biases, and it's tempting to pick people that you know will be good because you know exactly what they do, or they're in the same sphere as you. That's the difficult part, and it's something that it's normal to struggle with. And as long as you recognize that you have these biases, you'll be fine. There's a little bit of a component here. You may or may not drink or like to drink. The fact of the matter is alcohol is a social lubricant, and it helps if people meet in a pub or something like that. However, like I don't drink a lot. This is not a humble brag. I drink like a beer a night, but when I go on these, I'll nurse that beer for the whole night because else I just fall over. But the thing is, some people drink a lot. Some people drink nothing. Like maybe it's religious reasons, or they just don't like the taste of alcohol. And so you have to make sure that no matter what your stance on it, you know the whole spectrum before you start doing these things. It usually works really well. I mean, NS beer, it's obvious. Yesterday there was the beer bash. I mean, there's going to be alcohol, right? It's an integral part. GitHub has drink ups, I think. So it's an integral part. Now, whether it's good or bad is not something that I need to discuss here. Just be mindful if you're going to do this that it's somewhat expected, because it really helps to move from a formal setting with talks and stuff to an informal setting when things can loosen up a little bit. But do realize that not everybody's comfortable with that, and make sure that they feel accepted. And one of the really cool things about NSNorth is, even though we had alcohol and stuff, I know 2 people who don't drink, and they said that they really enjoyed the event because we set it up in a way that they didn't have to drink, or weren't forced to interact in a way that drinking was the only game in town. And it may be simply that we're just not always offering drinks. Like you have drink tickets, you have to go to the bar to get them or something like that. So I just talked about NSNorth. So this is the part of the talk where you level up. If you've done something like Cocoa Heads, like NS Quarter Nights, which is typically weekly or bi-weekly, and Cocoa Heads is typically monthly. I've seen it every 3 months. So you want to start your own conference. So my conference with Dan here was something that was born out of me drinking too much beer, and we decided to make our own conference. It's called NSNorth, and it has happened twice already. So the second time was exactly 4 weeks ago. So there might already be a conference in your area, and you can get involved with it, and you can help the organizers either just by volunteering or actually helping organize the whole thing. But you can also just create your own conference, what we did. There's multiple types of conferences, and they all have their challenges, and one is not necessarily easier than the other. Like a one-day single-track conference, there's the organization that has to go into this is not that different than a 2-day single-track conference or even a 2-day multi-track conference. You're just adding more stuff to it. One thing you want to be mindful of is doing things during the week versus during the weekend. There's this thing called that I like to call a boutique conference. It's like starts the Friday evening and then ends on the Saturday afternoon. So Sunday afternoon. I mean, like it's like basically 48 hours of a conference. There's quite a few of those. NSNorth is built that way because people don't have to take a lot of time off of work, if any, especially if you do something local. But during the week. During the weekend, you can get away with having shitty Wi-Fi, which you will probably have because conferences are not designed to handle even 100 people with 5 devices each. That usually overloads the Wi-Fi networks. So if you do a week conference, you want to be mindful of people will have to be connected to their work, and you'll have to have really good networking going on. And people will, sometimes not attend a session because they need to attend to a server that needs their attention, or they have this weekly meeting that they can't miss because it's bug triage or something. So there's these differences to be mindful of, but both kinds do work. What I want to tell you that is, if Dan and I can make a conference, you can make a conference. It's not difficult, but it does take a lot of effort. It's really a collection of small details that just add up. Right? We're developers and designers here, so we sweat the small details all the time, and we like to break things into smaller and smaller things so we can understand them and make sure that they get done properly. And we have a lot of tools. We use Trello, for instance, to organize a conference to make sure that everything goes by and we don't forget things, and you can set reminders and things that happen. That's really useful. The whole conference is set up in Trello, and it's free. It's a web tool. It's got an iOS client. It's fantastic. So there's lots of small details. You don't want to drop anything. You need one central place where you put all of these things. In our case, it was Trello. There's the problem, of course, of getting people to pay or not. Alt is free and has wonderful sponsors. NSNorth is not free and has no sponsors. So there's everything in between, right? So lots of models. I'm not too familiar with the sponsorship model. I know it's a lot of work too. And when you get your sponsors, you're really happy. They really help you, and they make wonderful products, and they want to talk to you about them. If you don't have any sponsors, then you will have to, pay for the venue and pay for the food and pay for the AV and pay for all these things, and that adds up really quickly. So you might want to consider both. At the basis, when you're creating a conference, you have 3 things that you need. You have the venue. So this is a fantastic venue, but they had to work for it to find it, I'm assuming. It's a lot of work to find a good venue. You have to have food sometimes. If you expect people to stay in the same place and mingle, and it's really helpful to serve them lunch or something, and especially if they pay for the conference. So the good news is, for the venue, typically the venue owner will deal with these events on a regular basis. They'll know all the things that you need to do, and they're professional, and they will help you with, say, all right, put this money here, and this will happen. And there are some details sometimes that need smoothing over, but more often than not, it works really well. Same with the food. If you go with a catering service, they will take care of the food, they will bring it in and everything, and you don't have to worry about the food being brought in. It will happen. The other good thing when you're having talks at a conference is you want fairly good AV and Wi-Fi too. So you need people that know how this works. The other two parts are depending if you're requiring payment or not. And even if you're not requiring payment, there'll be some kind of ticket processing system. There's a lot of them out there. And you can use whichever one you want. They all have different fees or not, depending of who you work. But it usually works really well. And if you're doing a multi-day conference, you will want to have some kind of hotel nearby with a block. And the block of the hotel is basically you say, we're expecting 100 people at our conference, so we're going to take a hotel block of like 40 rooms. And you tell the people, all right, you're going to get a discounted rate if you book using the code NSNorth. And then people are happy. They have the hotel that's next to the conference. If you sell out your block, great. If you don't sell out your block, you have to buy the remaining rooms. So it depends on the hotel, but this has been an experience. So it's kind of scary sometimes to say, all right, so I'll have to do this. Make sure that you don't lose your shirt. So far, we haven't. So you want to ask for help. You can't do this alone. It's doing it with one person or even two or more. You'll want volunteers, either for day of, like during the conference, or before. We have volunteers, much like here. And all I really did is I announced it to my local mailing list, people that are coming, and I set up a Google Docs spreadsheet, and people would sign up, and there was a little choice of like, what can you do, and things like that. And people just signed up, and they were people that paid for the conference, but were also volunteering. Most of the volunteers that I talked to said that they really enjoyed the volunteering experience because it put them in contact with more people, because people would come and seek them. So they made even more contacts, and were very happy about that. All right. So this is from Guy English of Singleton. You're a guest in my house. Don't be a jerk. So I have a quick rant here, if you will oblige me. PyCon 2011 had a problem where something blew out of proportion about inappropriate comments, and people were ejected from the conference and things like that in a not really easy manner. And Brit Ruby was actually canceled before it happened because of some comments that were made on Twitter. So there are talks about codes of conduct. As a privileged white male, I have to put on different goggles to look at this. And I've been told by many people that, well, many, more than a handful, right? So of people that said that they wouldn't even consider going to our conference if they didn't have a code of conduct. And to me, it was like, well, the code of conduct is obvious. Don't be a jerk, right? But they wanted something in writing and what I realized is this puts the onus not on the people who are attending the conference to not be jerks, but to the organizers to watch out for people and comment and behaviors that would be considered, assholey. And it's a bit more work, and I've never had to eject anybody from my conference. Most people are very well behaved, but it's a safety net for a lot of people to realize that this is here and we think about this. That's the key thing. So I was against it in the beginning, but now I realized that it was a really good thing to have a code of conduct. It doesn't cost you anything in a sense, and there's lots of good resources, and we can talk about them as after that you can just essentially copy and paste, and that's what they encourage. But read through them and see what's in there to see what it means for you and for the people that are going to attend. It's not a EULA. It's really a code of conduct. That's my rant. The sad thing about conferences is it's actually not that much fun if you're an organizer. Dan and I created a conference that we would like to attend with interesting people that we'd like to meet. We don't actually really attend the conference and meet the people, because we're like, oh shit, this thing's not working. Oh no, the food's not coming. Oh no, the museum is closing. Oh no, blah, blah. We always have to do things, and we don't enjoy the conference as much as we should. So really what you're doing here is you want to have topics so that people will, glue together. It's like the glue that holds everything together. But you can't have a conference that's even a one-day or a multi-day thing that's all about just people meeting up. It's like having only appetizers and no entrees, if you wish. Like it seems fun, but it really isn't. So you want to, if you ever build a conference, realize that it's about the people that are there. Yes, there are speakers, and they might be very, very interesting, and you might want to hear them. But the value that they get out of the conference, what fires them up, is all of these contacts that they're going to make. So build in some buffer time so that the people can interact together, and create this social effect, because they're all there in the same room. That's the huge thing. I mean, I can look at the WWDC talks on videos. That's really cool, but it's not the same thing as watching the WWDC talks on video in a hotel room with 20 other people. That's the social effect at work. So now you realize that this is no longer about you. You're building something, and you're giving back. And by doing this, it takes a lot of effort, but it is totally worth it. So thank you for obliging me with this talk, and I hope you enjoyed it. By the way, if you have any questions later on, feel free to email me at this address or find me on Twitter about organizing stuff, any questions you might have, anytime. Yes?
So did you find that while you were running your own meetups that you ended up having to do any of the talks yourself?
That's a very good question. It's actually a couple of things that I deleted. When you organize things, and thank you for asking it, when you organize something, it really helps to have a few talks in your back pocket so that you can step up and talk about stuff, whether it's something interesting you were debugging, new framework you found out about, some open source data, some open data you were working on, whatever. I usually have 4 or 5 proto talks in my Keynote folder, or deck set now, so that I'm ready to go at a moment's notice. These talks are not rehearsed. I just do them off the cuff, and that's why. And I do it that way because it's nice to have the little talk to add the little bit of structure that's needed for the meetup, and then things will just, people like to meet for something, and then they go into the social. Yeah. But so as an organizer, it's really helpful, which is why I was saying, if you find something, step up and do be ready to speak. The organizer will be very happy because, yeah, they have so many talks, but correct. You have to be on your toes a little bit. But if you're working in computers or in anything that's technology related, there's always new and shiny. Like, I'm sure we're going to have some talks about Swift, very soon in our local Cocoa Heads, because people are going to, and some of them might give wrong advice. It doesn't matter. We hear that, and then we can discuss, and we can talk amongst ourselves. It's really handy.
So would you say that even just running a meetup is good speakers practice?
Yes. That being said, I am consistently blown away by the quality of the people who choose to speak at Cocoa Heads, the local Cocoa Heads. They're so much better than I am. They spend a lot of, it's obvious that they've practiced and they have a really good deck and things like that. I just throw stuff in a markdown file and show it on screen. So in essence, I'm making sure that they'll have, they're really, really good. And I'm really happy that they're willing to speak.
Hi.
There we go.
Sorry, I'm bad with mics.
No problem.
I was told once to maybe take an improv class to speak. And I thought that was pretty interesting. What are your thoughts on that? And do you have any advice on how to be comfortable on stage?
I actually took some improv classes way back when I was in college, so that's like a lifetime ago, right? So it really helps, and I fell flat on my face quite a few times during improv, and did something that went completely into the weeds, and realized, hey, it's about detecting when you're going into the weeds more than anything else. Being comfortable on stage, I say the only thing you can do is do it. I can't find any better way of saying this. This is a bigger stage than I usually have. My Cocoa Heads meeting have 20 people. They're close, and there's a TV screen, and basically I stand up, there's a little lectern. This is a bit more, and the room is bigger, but in practice, it's the same thing. The other thing that really helps is to run through your talk beforehand. Like if you have something you want to talk about, and it's already set, do your talk in a room with maybe with the TV, like your AirPlay to the TV or something, and nobody is there. But do it like if there was an audience. So you've been through your talk already. You know how long it takes. You know the places where you might stumble or something like that. And that really builds up your confidence as well. Great question. Anything else? Please wait for the microphone. Thank you.
Is there a good resource for finding all your pre-existing local meetups other than just Googling Cocoa Heads, NSPeer, and whatever else, and your city name?
Right.
Is there any kind of directory?
Meetup.com is pretty good. It's much bigger than I've ever realized. And I don't use Meetup a lot because I do things mostly organically. Like I know people, I start a mailing list, and things start to happen. And once you get to a certain level, it just grows by itself. Lanyard is also good. It's another website, much like Meetup. Cocoa Heads is good because it's if you go to cocoaheads.org, you can see all the Cocoa Heads organizations and all their schedule throughout the world. Like it's a worldwide organization. So if you ever go to another city, like say you're traveling to, I don't know, New York or something, and it happens to be the second Thursday of the month, why not just show up there and take a look at their Cocoa Heads? That's why they're designed this way, to be always on this roughly the same date, so you can kind of plan around it. And once you start going to other conferences or meetups or things like that, then you will get more info. It's like a self-feeding cycle, right? It has to start somewhere. It might be just local, but it might be, if there's nothing locally and you want to start it and nothing really is taking, look if there's something in the next city and maybe make a little effort to go there and advertise it there at that meeting. And then maybe they'll know, oh, I know this guy in that city. I know that gal over there. And it's going to start creating. So you need to do a little bit of social footwork to be able to get it to start, I think. It can't, in my experience, it can't be all online. I mean, Meetup and Lanyard are great, but it requires a little bit of that work. Thank you very much.